Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more of the Great War. On to week 161. I choked on air. What the fuck? The second battle of Verdun. Lost opportunities on the Isonzo River. This week is just going to be further disappointment in the Italian leadership. You know, they're Luigi Cadorna really should hold the record for surprisingly disappointing. Like, in the sense, like, I didn't think it was possible to get more disappointing than he had been before, but he manages to do it every time he gets mentioned. He gets more disappointing. Before we dive in, though, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the disappointment that is Luigi Cadorna and General Haig. I'm assuming the second battle. No, the second battle of Verdun. Haig isn't going to be involved. What the fuck's happening at Verdun? I don't think I've heard of this one. It just clicked. For some reason, I was. Whoa, no, my mic. Hold on. Fixing. I probably need to get a new mic. This thing. I don't want. This thing costed $200 though. It's only been 3 years. I'm not getting a new one. Anyways. What was I saying? I was saying things. I forget what I was saying. Oh, for some reason I read Verdun as um the Somme. I don't know why. My brain is a mess today. Let's dive in.
If at first you don't succeed, try again.
No.
My parents told me that, and millions of other parents told their children that, and someone must have told Italian Army Chief of Staff Luigi Cadorna that, because this week he...
And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result each time. I hate actually the statement of try. You don't succeed, try again, whatever the fuck. I don't like that. I mean, like, to a certain extent, it's decent advice, but mainly I feel like it's kind of shitty advice. It doesn't really, it's not helpful advice. Like, you should always be willing to try and never give up, if you really want something, but like, complexities.
launched the 11th Battle of the Isonzo River.
Maybe I'm probably being overly cynical today.
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week, there was action in the West in both Belgium and France, with Canadian success in the latter. Both sides made gains in Romania.
It's like, it's got the just right amount of detail in it to understand, like, geography, and of course the lines as to where, what the current state of the war is, which was something I had been saying, I think, for the first 2, maybe 3 years of this show. First 2 years at the very least. They didn't have a map like this, I don't think. So I'm glad they finally have a proper animated map like this, to show the front lines. Because I do remember complaining before about, like, I wish they had a map showing the front lines.
There was growing chaos and violence at home in Russia, and the Italian front grew ready to explode once again. And that explosion happened this week. The Italians launched the battle August 18th and would, within the week, capture 5 mountain peaks, 20,000 enemy prisoners. The opening barrage went off before sunrise the 18th, and over 5,000 guns spent the day blasting the Austrian positions. The barrage was most effective on the section of the front commanded by Lieutenant General Enrico Caviglia, who had spotted all the Austrian positions in his sector. Every one opposite his lines was now either destroyed or badly damaged.
Oh my god, the Italians have a competent general? I didn't know that they could do that.
As the barrage drew to its close, the Italians attacked along the entire front from the Tolmie.
For any Italians watching, I'm sorry, but, like, your country does it to themselves. Like, your country's just easy to make fun of.
Mino bridgehead
In
to
this
the
case
Adriatic
right here.
Sea. Cavilia's 24th Corps began crossing the Isonzo, and though the 60th Division faced heavy fire and stiff resistance well into the night, the 47th Division, facing the already weakened Czech rifles, quickly crossed the river and went up the opposite bank. By dawn the 19th, they had secured the river and set up pontoon bridges, and Italians began pouring across. On the rest of the line, the Austro-Hungarian resistance was successful, and both sides took heavy casualties. On the southern edge of the Bajansitsa Plateau, the Italians tried repeatedly to take Mount Santo, but to no avail, and the battle along most of the line became a deadly war of attrition. Still, by the morning of the 20th, Caviglia had surrounded the Czech rifles and torn a gap in the Austrian lines at the northern end of the plateau, and the path to possible victory was open. But General Luigi Capello, in overall command of the Second Army, was unwilling to move his army forward on such a narrow front while the Austrians held positions on its flanks. Cadorna agreed with him. Thing is, as John MacDonald points out in Caporetto and the Isonzo campaign, neither general seemed able to comprehend the fact that the enemy on the flanks were in static fortifications and thus in no position to intervene in a fluid battle behind them. After 2 days of hesitation, the opportunity was lost. The Duke of Aosta, leading the Third Army, was attacking on the Carso Plateau.
Wait, that's not the Duke of Aosta. That's a different guy. What happened to the other Duke of Aosta? Did he die last week? I don't think they mentioned it. Because I remember it said 1917. I was like, oh, are we gonna... Did they say it last week and I just didn't hear it? And by last week, I mean 4 days ago.
The Duke of Aosta, leading the Third Army, was attacking on the Carso Plateau, but his attacks on the northern and southern flanks were unsuccessful. He used a massive artillery barrage supported by Navy guns at sea and British artillery batteries, but could not force the Austrian positions. The Austrians even took 6,000 Italian prisoners from the flanks of the Duke's army, which says something about Italian morale by this point. It was a different story, though, with the Duke's center. By the 19th, Austrian General Svetozar Boroyevich von Boynya's attention had been drawn to Caviglia's success on the Bajansitsa Plateau, as he believed the Carso would hold, but in the center, the Duke's artillery had broken and scattered the defenders. The Duke hesitated in sending in the infantry, though, and by the time he attacked, the Austrian defenders had regrouped. But the Italian advantage in men and artillery would tell over time. By the 22nd, new gaps were being torn in the Austrian lines, though not being exploited, and Boroyevich was convinced he had to abandon the Bajansitsa Plateau. That night, he removed his men to new defensive lines further back, and when morning arrived, the Italians prepared to renew the attack, only to find the enemy gone. But the Austrians had lost the Bajansitsa Plateau and Mount Santo. However, MacDonald claims that the Italians had lost more this week. He thinks they lost their greatest opportunity of the war, their greatest chance to win it. Now, I can't say whether he's right or not, but opportunity there certainly was. Another Allied offensive also began this week. On the 20th, the Second Offensive Battle of Verdun began.
Wait, they're still like... for whatever reason, I thought the French had been able to push further out of... push the Germans further away from Verdun. I did not think they were still, that close to the city.
The French took enemy defenses north of Verdun on a 17-kilometer front to a depth of nearly 3 kilometers, and now hold Avocourt, the Mortagne, and Hill 240, taking 5,000 German prisoners. On the 24th, they advanced again, carrying Hill 304. Many of you may remember these names. They were the scenes of some of the bloodiest fighting in history during the Battle of Verdun last year. Now, this was a diversionary attack aimed at preventing the Germans from sending troops up to the huge Allied offensive at Ypres. There was another such diversionary attack still in progress, the Battle of Hill 70. The Canadian Corps took the high ground early in the week and resisted nearly 24 German counterattacks, though Canadian attacks on the city itself were unsuccessful and it remained in German hands. But those German counterattacks had terrible casualties for the Germans, and total casualties for the battle were around 9,000 for the Canadians, but some 25,000 for the Germans.
Damn.
And what of that offensive at Ypres?
Go Canada.
Well, the initial gains of the battle were not being maintained, though on August 22nd, a few hundred meters on the Menin Road were gained for 3,000 casualties. But this was really a triumph for the Germans, again stopping a numerically superior sustained attack. For the 3.5 weeks of advance and counterattack, British Commander-in-Chief Sir Douglas Haig's men had advanced about 3 kilometers, which was a little more than half of the first day's objective. His amphibious attack force was still just there waiting for the fall of Roulers. It was pretty much clear that Roulers was in no danger of being captured, though, and that force would quietly be disbanded. The offensive focus of the battle would now shift away from Hugh Gough's 5th Army to Herbert Plumer's 2nd Army. Haig gave Plumer 3 weeks to prepare for his attacks. Plumer had been there for 2 years, and unlike Haig or Gough, had been paying attention to the new German defense system and had come up with a counter-tactic for the Hindenburg Line's
A competent general? No way.
flexible defense system. Haig had more reason for confidence than he knew. Plumer had, in fact, found the key to the German defense, one that neutralized its strengths and exploited its inherent weaknesses. Like most truly brilliant military plans, Plumer's was elegant in its simplicity. It began with the premise that relatively short gains of a mile or less, had become available almost for the asking as a result of the thinness and elasticity of the German forward positions. Premise number 2 was that gains of several miles were now more out of the question than ever because of the Germans' increased ability to counterattack in force. The conclusion was so blindingly obvious that only Plumer and his staff had seen it. What Plumer planned to do was to outsmart the Germans with attacks that stopped when they took the easy ground and never went far enough to trigger a counterattack. If he did a cumulative series of such attacks, it might drive the Germans back out of their defenses and maybe into a war of maneuver that they didn't have the manpower to survive. There was actually a...
It is so simple that, you know, I could understand. Like, that's one of those situations where it's like something is so obviously simple that you don't even comprehend. Like, you don't even, it doesn't even register on your radar because it is just so simple. It's just like, no, it's like, it's too obvious of a solution to the problem of fighting the Germans in this case, where it's like, no way that would work, right? But then you get it pointed out to you and you do it and it works and you're like, huh. And that's like, I'm not gonna, like, there are plenty of things to criticize Haig for. Not noticing that kind of flaw in the German defense, I'm not gonna count against him because, I mean, one, I didn't even fucking register it until it just got pointed out here. But, you know, that's one of those things where it's just like, it's so stupidly simple that it shouldn't work, but it does, right? So, but everything else, all of the criticism of Haig, still valid.
A war of movement that the Germans were currently fighting in Romania, though the movement was coming to an end. On August 19th, Romanian military command took over complete control of running the ongoing Battle of Mareșești from the Russians. The fighting was fairly intense at this point, but Romania held its ground. Though there would be some more scattered action after this week, the Germans would be unable to improve their positions, and the Romanian lines would hold. This battle will end as a Romanian success, which is a testament to their army's reorganization and retraining this spring after being beaten last fall by the combined Central Powers. The Romanians and their allies, the Russians, took around 25,000 casualties each, while the Germans took over 60,000. I do not have figures for the Austro-Hungarian casualties. The Russians had been pulled out there to try to save their own front, where the Germans claimed 22,000 Russian prisoners in recent fighting in Galicia and Bukovina. The Germans were now going into action in the far north, beginning attacks towards Riga on the 21st. The following day, the Russian defenders retreated 12 kilometers to shorten the front lines and try to prevent disaster. But disaster came at the beginning of the week, far to the south, behind the Allied lines. On the 18th, the Great Fire of Salonika broke out. Almost half of the city burned down and 80,000 people were made homeless.
Damn.
British Army headquarters was destroyed, and more importantly, almost all of the stock of quinine, which was needed to treat the epidemic levels of malaria in the region. And the week ends with Germans unable to advance in Romania, the British unable to advance in Belgium, but French and Canadian success in France, and a huge new offensive in Italy that could have possibly won the war, at least according to some historians. But this isn't the first such possible opportunity. The Brusilov offensive, the fall of Gorizia, there were big opportunities there and maybe other places that were not taken advantage of. But can you really blame the various leaders for that? I mean, the war has gone on for so long, with the monotony of endless carnage failing to produce victory, that when the transport comes, do you really think you'd see it? Maybe not. If you want to learn more about Louis...
No, I do not want to learn more about dumbass Supreme. The second battle, and that was the Great War, week 161. The second battle of Verdun. Lost opportunities on the Isonzo River. Got nothing to add here at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.